Close your eyes for a moment. Actually, don't. You're watching a video. But imagine this. 13.8 billion years ago, there was nothing. Then, in an instant too brief for comprehension, everything exploded into existence. Stars ignited, galaxies formed. For billions of years, the universe was just cooking, waiting. 4.5 billion years ago, a small, insignificant rock began circling an average star in an unremarkable corner of space. That rock, our Earth, was hell. A boiling, toxic nightmare where nothing lived because nothing could live. But then, somehow, against odds so astronomical they make winning the lottery look like a certainty, life began. One cell, then two, then billions. For 3 billion years, life was just slime, bacteria, single cells doing their thing. Then, 500 million years ago, things got interesting. Complex life emerged. Fish, insects, dinosaurs ruled for 165 million years. And then, 66 million years ago, a rock fell from the sky and reset everything. In the aftermath, in the shadow of extinction, small furry creatures survived. Our ancestors. They cowered in burrows, terrified, hungry, barely alive. But they made it. Fast forward through millions of years of evolution. Primates, early hominids, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and then just 200,000 years ago, you appeared. Well, not you specifically, but Homo sapiens, your species. For most of those 200,000 years, your ancestors lived in constant terror. They were hunted. They starved. They froze. They watched their children die from infections we now cure with a pill and a glass of water. They fought wars with sharpened sticks. They didn't know if the sun would rise tomorrow because they didn't understand what the sun was. And yet, somehow, through an unbroken chain of survival, pain, luck, and sheer stubborn persistence, here you are, sitting comfortably, probably on a couch, watching this video on a device that contains more computing power than all of NASA had when they put humans on the moon. You are the result of an unbroken chain of ancestors who survived everything. Everything. Wars, plagues, predators, ice ages, famine, heartbreak. Every single one of your ancestors lived long enough to reproduce. Not one of them failed. You are the culmination of billions of years of cosmic accidents and evolutionary miracles. So here's the question. Why are you so miserable? Let me tell you about a normal Tuesday in your life compared to the wildest dreams of your ancestors. You wake up, not because a predator is attacking your camp, not because you're freezing to death, not because raiders are burning your village. You wake up because an alarm gently plays music on your phone. You're annoyed by this. Your ancestor from 10,000 years ago would weep with envy. You walk to your kitchen. You open a box, a refrigerator that keeps food cold, using invisible electricity. Inside, there's food. So much food. Food from different continents. Strawberries in winter. Meat that you didn't have to hunt, butcher, or watch die. Milk that won't make you sick. You grab something, anything, and you eat. You probably don't even think about it.
Do you understand what just happened? You had immediate access to calories without any effort, any danger, or any uncertainty. Your ancestors spent 12 hours a day doing nothing but searching for food. 12 hours, every day. And most days, they went to bed hungry. You turn on the tap. Clean water pours out, unlimited, safe. You probably let it run for a few seconds, waiting for it to get cold because you're picky about water temperature. Your ancestor from the Middle Ages just had a stroke watching you waste clean water. They spent their entire lives drinking from rivers filled with human waste, animal corpses, and disease. Half their children died before age 5 from water alone. You get ready for work, you put on clean clothes. They were made by machines in factories thousands of miles away, shipped across oceans on vessels the size of cities, and delivered to a store where you exchanged paper, or more likely a piece of plastic, for them. The entire outfit cost you less than one day's wages. Your ancestor from the 1800s wore the same wool garment for years until it literally fell apart on their body. They would have considered you royalty. You leave your home. It's warm inside because of central heating, or cool because of air conditioning. You've literally conquered the weather. You've made the inside of your dwelling any temperature you want, regardless of the outside world. Do you know how insane that is? For 99.9% of human history, if it was cold, you were cold. If it was hot, you were hot. Now, you just turn a dial. You get in your car, a machine that moves you 30, 40, 50 miles without you getting tired. In an hour, you travel distances that would have taken your ancestor from the 1700s 3 days on horseback. You're probably annoyed that traffic is slow. Let's talk about health for a moment, because this is where the contrast becomes almost comical. You have a headache. You take an aspirin, it's gone in 20 minutes. Your ancestor from any century before 1900 would have assumed the headache was demons, bad humors, or divine punishment. They would have drilled a hole in their skull to let the evil out. That was a real medical procedure. Trepanation. Look it up. You get a cut on your hand, you wash it with soap, apply antibiotic ointment, and put on a Band-Aid. Your ancestor from the 1850s died from that cut. Sepsis, infection, gangrene. The President of the United States, James A. Garfield, died from an infected gunshot wound, not because of the bullet, but because doctors kept sticking their unwashed hands into the wound trying to find the bullet. Germ theory didn't exist yet. You're tired and run down, you go to the doctor, they take your blood, run tests, analyze it in a lab, and tell you exactly what's wrong. Low vitamin D, iron deficiency, thyroid issue. Here's a pill. You're fixed. Your ancestor from literally any point in history would have gone to a barber who would have cut their arm open and drained their blood into a bowl because they believed illness was caused by too much blood. George Washington, the first president of the United States, died because his doctors drained 40% of his blood trying to cure a throat infection. Germ theory didn't exist yet. You're 35 years old. Statistically, you're not even middle-aged yet. You'll probably live into your 80s. Your ancestor from medieval Europe, at 35, they were elderly. Most people didn't make it past 40. If you were a woman, pregnancy was Russian roulette. 1 in 3 women died in childbirth or from childbirth complications. 1 in 3. Today, in developed countries, maternal mortality is about 14 deaths per 100,000 births. That's 0.014%. For most of history, having a baby was one of the most dangerous things a woman could do. Let's talk about children for a moment, and I apologize because this gets dark. You probably know children. Maybe you have them. Maybe you have nieces and nephews or friends with kids. Now imagine this. Imagine that half of them died before age 10. Not from accidents, just from normal childhood. Measles, mumps, smallpox, cholera, influenza, infected scratches, diarrhea. That was normal. That was expected. For most of human history, parents didn't fully bond with their children until the child was at least 5 or 6 years old because the odds were so high that the child wouldn't make it. You would have 6, 7, 8 children hoping that 3 or 4 would survive to adulthood.
Today, in developed nations, child mortality before age 5 is less than 1%. Less than 1%. That means something that was humanity's greatest source of grief and trauma for 200,000 years has been almost completely eliminated in the span of a single century. Your ancestors would have burned their entire villages as an offering to the gods for that kind of miracle. Let's zoom out for a moment and talk about the sheer material abundance of modern life. You live in a world where poverty, real poverty, is defined as lacking access to the internet. Think about that. In the United States, poverty doesn't mean starvation anymore. It means not having Wi-Fi. I'm not minimizing poverty. It's still suffering, it's still struggle, but the definition of poverty has shifted so dramatically that what we consider poor today would have been unimaginable wealth 200 years ago. A person living below the poverty line in a developed country today likely has a refrigerator, a microwave, a television, a smartphone, access to education, access to emergency medical care, and access to more information than existed in all the libraries of the ancient world combined. They have running water, electricity, and a toilet that flushes waste away to somewhere they never have to think about. Your ancestor from 1850, even if they were middle class, had none of those things. None. They had a candle, maybe an oil lamp if they were fancy. They had an outhouse filled with human waste that they had to sit over in winter. They had no refrigeration, so food spoiled constantly. They had no telephone, no way to contact anyone beyond shouting distance without physically traveling to them. Let me give you a specific example. Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men in American history, died in 1919. He had a fortune equivalent to over $300 billion today. He owned mansions, railroads, steel mills, and had more money than he could spend in 100 lifetimes. And yet you, sitting on your couch right now, have access to things he would have paid his entire fortune for. You can communicate instantly with someone on the other side of the planet. You can watch any movie ever made whenever you want. You can listen to any song ever recorded. You can access the sum total of human knowledge in seconds. You can travel across the country in 5 hours. You can see photographs of the surface of Mars. Carnegie couldn't do any of that. With all his wealth, with all his power, he lived in a world without antibiotics, without air conditioning, without the internet, without modern medicine. He watched children die from diseases we've eradicated. He suffered from conditions we fix with outpatient surgery. You have access to miracles he couldn't even imagine.
Let me take you on a brief tour of history, just to make this absolutely clear. 50,000 years ago, your ancestor lived in a cave. Maybe. If they were lucky. Most lived in temporary shelters made of branches and animal skins. They had fire, which was the pinnacle of technology. Every single day was dedicated to not dying, finding food, avoiding predators, staying warm. The average life expectancy was about 30 years, but that's misleading. If you survived childhood, you might make it to 50, but childhood was a bloodbath. 12,000 years ago, humans invented agriculture. We think of this as a great leap forward. It was, sort of. But it also made life worse in many ways. Hunter-gatherers were actually healthier than early farmers. They had more diverse diets, more leisure time, and less disease. Farming meant staying in one place, which meant sanitation problems, which meant disease. It meant dependence on crops, which meant famine when crops failed. It meant storing surplus food, which meant wealth inequality, which meant war. 4,000 years ago, you could be living in ancient Egypt. Sounds exotic, right? The pyramids, the pharaohs, the Nile. Sure. You'd also be a slave, or a farmer taxed into poverty. You'd be illiterate. You'd worship gods you believed would torture you in the afterlife if you didn't follow elaborate rituals. You'd watch your children die from infected mosquito bites. You'd never travel more than 20 miles from where you were born. 2,000 years ago, at the height of the Roman Empire, you might think life was pretty good. Rome had roads, aqueducts, public baths, and a vast trade network. But Rome also had crucifixion as a common punishment. They had gladiatorial games where humans killed each other for entertainment. They had plague. They had lead poisoning from their water pipes. They had slavery on a massive scale. The average Roman citizen lived to about 35. 1,000 years ago, medieval Europe. Knights, castles, romance, right? No. You're a serf. You're legally bound to the land. You can't leave. You work the Lord's fields, and in exchange, he protects you from raiders. Except he doesn't really. You live in a one-room hut with a dirt floor, no windows, and a hole in the roof for smoke. You share this space with your entire family and your livestock. You've never bathed. You don't have teeth. You don't know how to read. The church tells you that suffering in this life is good because it means rewards in the next life. So you accept your misery as divine will. 500 years ago, you're living through the Protestant Reformation. Europe is tearing itself apart over religion. The 30 Years' War kills 8 million people. 1/3 of the German population dies. Villages are burned. Women are accused of witchcraft and burned alive. Medicine is still based on the four humors. Surgery is done without anesthesia. If you're sick, you're bled. If that doesn't work, you're bled more. 200 years ago, the Industrial Revolution. Progress, at last. Except you're working in a factory 16 hours a day. You're 8 years old. You're operating dangerous machinery with no safety regulations. You lose a finger. No one cares. There's no workers' compensation, no sick leave, no childhood. The air is so polluted that coal fog kills thousands in a single week. You live in a tenement with 20 other people. Everyone has tuberculosis. Everyone is coughing blood into rags. 100 years ago, World War I, trench warfare, poison gas, machine guns, artillery barrages that last days. Soldiers develop shell shock from the constant bombardment. Millions die. Then, the Spanish flu arrives and kills 50 million more. 50 million. In 2 years. Let's talk about violence, because this is important. You live in the safest period in human history. By far. Not by a little, by an incomprehensible margin. For most of history, violence was the leading cause of death for young men. Not disease, not accidents. Murder, warfare, raiding parties, blood feuds, tribal conflicts. If you were a man between 15 and 30, there was a solid chance you'd die violently. In medieval Europe, the homicide rate was about 40 murders per 100,000 people per year. Today, in Western Europe, it's about 1 per 100,000. In the United States, even with all our problems, it's about 5 per 100,000. You are 40 times less likely to be murdered than your ancestor from the Middle Ages. 40 times! You don't think about violence because you don't have to. You walk down the street without fear of being clubbed over the head and robbed. You don't carry a weapon everywhere you go. You don't sleep with a knife under your pillow. You don't teach your children how to fight from age 5 because their survival depends on it. You've never seen a dead body outside of a funeral home. Your ancestors saw dead bodies regularly. They saw people executed in public squares. They saw bodies left to rot as warnings. They saw plague victims stacked like firewood. Death was everywhere, all the time. You've never experienced real hunger. I don't mean skipping lunch. I mean not knowing when you'll eat again. The kind of hunger where your body starts consuming its own muscle tissue. The kind of hunger that makes you weak, delirious, desperate. The kind of hunger that drove people to cannibalism during famines. Famine was common, expected. In medieval Europe, there was a major famine about every 3 years. People ate grass, they ate bark, they ate leather, they ate their animals. Then they ate each other. Today, we have a global food surplus. We produce more food than we need. The problem isn't scarcity, it's distribution. That's a solvable problem. For most of history, scarcity was the problem, and it wasn't solvable. When the crops failed, people died. Millions of people. You've never been cold, really cold. The kind of cold that kills. You've been uncomfortable, you've been chilly, but you've never spent months in freezing temperatures with inadequate shelter, inadequate clothing, and inadequate food, knowing that if winter lasts too long, you won't make it to spring. The Little Ice Age, from roughly 1300 to 1850, caused global temperatures to drop. Harvests failed, rivers froze, people froze to death in their homes. Entire villages were abandoned because it was too cold to survive. You control your environment. You have heating, you have insulation, you have winter coats made from synthetic materials engineered to trap warmth, you have thermostats. Your ancestor had a fireplace. Maybe. If they had wood. If they didn't, they froze.
So, here we are. You live in an era of unprecedented safety, abundance, health, and comfort. You have access to miracles your ancestors couldn't imagine. You've been freed from the grinding horror of survival that defined human existence for 200,000 years. And yet, you're anxious. You're stressed. You're depressed. You feel lonely despite being more connected than ever. You feel purposeless despite having more opportunities than any generation in history. You feel overwhelmed despite having more convenience than any humans who ever lived. What the hell happened? Let me tell you a story. 2 stories, actually. Story 1. It's 10,000 BCE. You're a hunter-gatherer. You wake up at dawn. The entire tribe wakes up together. You know every person in your tribe. You've known them your entire life. These are your people. You spend the morning gathering berries with your sister and your cousin. You laugh, you gossip. You know you're safe because 6 members of the tribe are always watching for predators. Midday, the hunters return with a deer. Everyone celebrates. This is enough food for days. Tonight, there will be a feast. The tribe gathers round the fire. You eat, you tell stories, children play, someone plays a flute made from a bone. You feel connected. You feel part of something. You feel purpose. Your role is clear. Gather food, protect the tribe, raise children, pass on knowledge. When you die, you'll be mourned by people who knew you, who loved you, who depended on you. Story 2. It's 2025. You wake up at 6:30 a.m., your alarm blares, you're alone in your apartment. You haven't seen your family in months. They live in another state. You check your phone, 47 notifications. None of them are personal, mostly work emails and social media updates from people you've never met. You get ready in silence. You drive to work, in traffic, surrounded by thousands of people, all alone in their cars. You don't make eye contact. You arrive at the office. You sit in a cubicle. You stare at a screen for 8 hours, moving information from one place to another. You don't produce anything tangible. You don't see the impact of your work. You don't know if it matters. Lunch break. You eat alone at your desk while scrolling through social media. You see people on vacation, people getting married, people achieving things. You feel inadequate. You feel like you're falling behind. You feel like everyone else has figured out life except you. Evening. You drive home. Traffic again. You heat up dinner in the microwave, something that was designed in a laboratory to taste good but has no nutritional value. You sit on the couch. You watch Netflix. You scroll through your phone. Hours pass. You've interacted with hundreds of pieces of content, but 0 humans.
Before bed, you feel vaguely anxious. You don't know why. Nothing bad happened today. Nothing threatened you. You're safe. You're fed. You're sheltered. But something feels wrong. Something feels empty. You go to bed. Alone. in the dark, wondering why you feel this way. Here's the problem. Your brain hasn't caught up to your life. Evolution is slow. It takes thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years for significant changes. Humans evolved to live in small tribes of 50 to 150 people. We evolved to walk 10 miles a day. We evolved to eat meat, vegetables, and fruit when we could find it. We evolved to sleep when it's dark and wake when it's light. We evolved to work physically, to solve immediate problems, to feel connected to our community. And then, in the span of about 200 years, everything changed. The Industrial Revolution, urbanization, technology, globalization, the internet, social media. Your body and brain are still running software designed for the African savanna, but you're trying to operate in a world of skyscrapers, screens, artificial light, processed food, and social networks of thousands. Your brain doesn't understand safety. For 200,000 years, safety was temporary. You might be safe right now, but danger was always around the corner. So your brain evolved to constantly scan for threats. That's anxiety. It's not a bug, it's a feature that was useful when leopards were trying to eat you, but is now firing constantly because your brain interprets your boss's email as a mortal threat. Your brain doesn't understand abundance. For 200,000 years, food scarcity was the norm. When you found food, you ate as much as you could because you didn't know when you'd eat again. That's why you can't stop eating chips. Your brain is screaming, "Calories, store them, you might starve tomorrow." Except you won't. But your brain doesn't know that. Your brain doesn't understand isolation. For 200,000 years, being alone meant death. If you were separated from the tribe, you were dead. So your brain evolved to feel intense discomfort when isolated. That's loneliness. It's a survival mechanism. It's supposed to drive you back to the group. But now, you can be physically safe while completely isolated. You can have food, shelter, and security without needing anyone. So you stay alone. And your brain panics. It doesn't understand. It thinks you're dying. Social media makes this worse. Your brain sees all these people, all these faces, all this activity and thinks, "Great, community!" But it's not. It's parasocial. You're not actually connecting. You're consuming content about other people's lives while having no genuine interaction. It's like looking through a window at a party you're not invited to. It triggers all the social comparison mechanisms without any of the reward. Your brain doesn't understand purpose without struggle. For 200,000 years, purpose was obvious. Survive. Help the tribe survive. That's it. Every action had clear meaning. Hunt the deer. Everyone eats. Gather firewood. Everyone stays warm. Protect the children. The tribe continues. Now you work in marketing. You create PowerPoint presentations about brand synergy. Does it matter? You honestly don't know. You're removed from the impact. You don't see the result. You don't feel necessary.
Humans need to feel necessary. We need to feel like our existence matters to someone. For most of history, this was guaranteed. The tribe needed you. If you died, they suffered. Now, your company would replace you in 2 weeks. Your friends would be sad, but they'd move on. You're replaceable. Your brain knows it, and it's horrifying. There's one more piece to this puzzle, and it's uncomfortable to talk about. Comfort might be killing us. Not physically, psychologically. Humans evolved through adversity. For 200,000 years, every generation faced challenges that tested them to their limits. Famine, war, predators, disease. They suffered. But that suffering created resilience, community, and meaning. When your tribe was starving, everyone came together. When your village was attacked, everyone fought side by side. Shared struggle created bonds that we can barely comprehend today. People would die for each other.
not hypothetically, actually die, because their survival was interdependent. You don't need anyone like that anymore. Not really. You can survive completely alone, order food online, work remotely, entertain yourself with streaming services, never leave your apartment, never speak to another human, and you'll be fine, physically. But psychologically, you're dying, because humans are social animals. We're not built for independence. We're built for interdependence. We're built to need each other. The comfort and convenience that we celebrate have removed the very mechanisms that created deep human connection. You don't need your neighbor to help you raise a barn. You don't need your family to help you survive winter. You don't need your community to defend against threats. So the bonds weaken, and you're left with superficial connections. Facebook friends, LinkedIn contacts, people you nod at in the hallway. And here's the really twisted part. We invented all of this to make life easier, to reduce suffering. And we succeeded. We've eliminated more suffering than any civilization in history. But in doing so, we've also eliminated meaning. Because for humans, meaning comes from struggle, from overcoming challenges, from being needed, from mattering. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz, wrote that humans can endure any suffering as long as it has meaning. The prisoners who survived the concentration camps weren't the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who found purpose in their suffering, taking care of others, planning for the future, holding on to hope. Meanwhile, modern humans, living in absolute luxury compared to any historical standard, feel empty because we have comfort without purpose, safety without meaning, abundance without struggle. We've won. We've conquered nature. We've eliminated the threats that terrorized humanity for millennia.
You need nature. Your body is designed to move through natural environments. Walk, hike, garden, spend time outside. Your nervous system needs it. You need to limit inputs. Your brain is not designed to process information from thousands of people every day. It's designed for about 150. Limit social media, limit news, limit the fire hose of content. Give your brain space to think, to process, to rest. And finally, you need perspective. You need to remember how miraculous this all is. The fact that you're alive, the fact that you're safe, the fact that you have opportunities that billions of humans who came before you would have considered divine gifts. Gratitude isn't toxic positivity. It's not pretending everything is fine. It's acknowledging reality. And the reality is, you're living in a miracle. A strange, disconnected, anxiety-inducing miracle, but a miracle nonetheless. You are the temporary arrangement of atoms that gets to experience the universe understanding itself. You are the universe looking back at itself with wonder. For a brief moment, a cosmic eye blink, you get to be conscious, to feel, to think, to love, to create. Your ancestors fought through hell to give you this moment, this strange, comfortable, confusing moment. So what will you do with it? Will you scroll through feeds of strangers' curated lives, feeling inadequate? Or will you step outside and feel the sun on your face, remembering that you're standing on a rock hurtling through space at 67,000 miles per hour, held to the surface by an invisible force we call gravity, breathing oxygen produced by organisms that are also made of stardust? Will you compare yourself to impossible standards? Or will you remember that you're a walking miracle, made of the same atoms as galaxies, with a 3-pound lump of meat in your skull that can contemplate infinity? You are living in the happiest time in history to be alive. And yes, you might still be miserable. That's okay. That's human. That's the paradox of consciousness. But at least now you understand why. And understanding is the first step toward something better. You are here, now, in this moment, connected to everything that came before and everything that will come after. You are part of the great unfolding story of the universe becoming aware of itself. And that, despite everything, despite the anxiety and the loneliness and the confusion, is absolutely extraordinary. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're the result of billions of years of cosmic history. Act like it.